How likely, if you do get that injunction, I mean, the view we get down here in Australia of the way the swamp, as Donald Trump would describe it, operates in Washington, is that it's told what to do and it just doesn't comply, because, you know, we've seen what the FBI did with the Russia hoax, and how the Democrat Party behaves, and the Democrat Party currently occupies the White House. I mean, you get this injunction, what will change? Will anything change?
Yeah, so that's a really, really good question. A lot of people are wondering that. One of the defendants named in our case is the Department of Justice, which is the branch of the executive government responsible for enforcing laws and enforcing court rulings. And so if they're implicated in this, like, who's going to enforce the ruling of the court? I think we'll get, actually, if the judge issues an injunction, that will have an effect. And here's the reason why. It'll be the judge basically saying, at the most basic level, you've got to stop communicating with one another about censorship, and you've got to stop communicating with the social media companies about censorship. And that will stop, at least temporarily, because any of those communications are still fair game for us to subpoena. So if they continue to do that, and we subpoena that information, and the judge looks at it and basically recognizes that the federal government is not following his injunction order, those individuals implicated could be liable for much more serious charges like contempt of court, which could involve potentially jail time. So I think they're going to duck and cover if we get the injunction. They may even start kind of throwing one another under the bus, a little bit, trying to out some of their quote unquote allies to, throw
those allies, and those allies could be
angry mob.
Those allies could be in big tech as well. I mean, we're already seeing, since Elon Musk took over Twitter, we're already seeing relaxation of some of the censorship from the major social media platforms. Do you think a consequence of this injunction will be that some social media platforms and big tech will become less censorious?
I do, because this puts the companies in a really, really tight spot. And I think they're going to be much more reluctant to communicate with or cooperate with the government on any content-related matters in the future, because of their potential liability. Another thing that happened recently in our case is that we converted it from just these 2 states plus the 4 private plaintiffs to being what's called a class action lawsuit, meaning that I, as a private plaintiff, am representing everyone in the United States who was unlawfully censored. And if we prevail in this case, that opens up the door. It sets a precedent for other cases where other individuals can start going after either the government or the social media companies or both for damages that happened as a result of government-sponsored censorship. And the companies are not going to want to incur that kind of legal liability or legal threat. So it's still an open case, open question about how to stop the government leviathan, especially after our case ends and the scrutiny level kind of goes back to baseline, right? How or what mechanism is going to enforce the court ruling at that point? But at the very least, the social media companies are going to be much, much more wary if we get a favorable ruling in this case. And I think this case is likely going to go to the Supreme Court, because we're going to appeal all the way up if we don't get a favorable ruling. And the government's going to appeal all the way up. Likewise.
Well, I've got to say that's pretty exciting information, and we will watch it very closely here, because what happens in the US regarding this kind of censorship and what happened during COVID applies as much here.